What do you feel when you see the image of a World War I era battlefield? What do you feel seeing a surreal image like this, a depiction of war? What do you feel when you see an image with a liminal aesthetic? What do you feel seeing all of these images playing one after the other? Perhaps you feel disjointed, caught off guard, confused. The raging gunfire and screams of a battlefield. The quiet hum of fluorescent lights in a liminal space. These things are seemingly worlds apart, so disparate that no comparison or link could possibly be made. What could these things possibly have to do with one another? Everything. A century ago, surrealist art emerged as a way to try to pick up the pieces after the calamity of the Great War. Today, the liminal aesthetic has emerged as a full-blown art movement. And though it is not reconciling with the calamity of a world war, it is nevertheless an attempt to grapple with the sudden changes, the piling crises, and the general disconnection of the modern age. This is a story of change, a story of rupture, a story of how we make sense of it all through our art. We will begin our story right here. We call them liminal spaces. We see them in our dreams. We realize we're in one in the darkest and loneliest hours of the night. Some are terrified of them. Others are comforted by them. But regardless of what you feel, we are all fascinated by them. These spaces and the photographs of them have turned into a proper art movement online, with various subgenres that stretch out from the original source. Accompanied by feelings of nostalgia and unease, it is an internet sensation. Some might say that it's an aesthetic that has run its course. But I, for one, am endlessly fascinated by them. So much so that I decided to take the time to make a video like this. I first encountered them a few years ago, during my sophomore year of college. I was browsing on Reddit when something caught my eye. It was this. I can't capture what it was that I felt in that moment when I saw that image. It was a mix of nostalgia, yearning, comfort, all paired with a deep disquiet. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before. Sure, I had felt nostalgia before. Looking through old photographs, retracing years that seemed to pass by at an ever-alarming speed. I had yearned before, felt the desire to be home when I was away for extended periods, longed to be in the presence of another. I had most certainly felt comfort. Raised in a large home, With 2 loving parents and 2 siblings, I had been fortunate to have a childhood worth the nostalgia. I have also felt the disquiet, the deep sense that something was wrong. These emotions are part and parcel of the human experience, a small sliver of that which we might feel. But to have these emotions happening all at once was something I had never felt before. I was captured, fascinated by something that was so unlike any other. This image was perhaps the first liminal space to gain traction online. Posted to the X forum on 4chan in May of 2019, users were asked to post images that felt off. It's a simple image, really. There's nothing much to see, and it's quite grainy, in fact. It's hardly what one would consider a professional photo. It looks like an otherwise unremarkable photo of an unremarkable space. So why doesn't it feel that way? As is common with nearly every good liminal space image, I cannot help but feel like I have been there before. Something about it just feels familiar. To say that this image had an effect on people would be a terrible understatement. People began comparing the picture and the feeling it gave to other locations. Perhaps another empty office, a school outside of typical hours, a hallway you're typically not supposed to be in. It spawned one of the most well-known and evocative responses. Posted by an anonymous user, it turns that simple picture, that picture of an old and empty office, into an otherworldly existence. If you're not careful, and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum humbuzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. In a mere 78 words, an artistic movement was launched. What is it that makes for a liminal space? According to the subreddit r/liminal space, a liminal space is the time between the what was and the next. It is a place of transition, waiting and not knowing. Liminal space is where all transformation takes place, if we learn to wait and let it form us. A liminal space, then, is the visual representation of being on the threshold. This doesn't necessarily mean that the image itself must feature an exclusively transitional space, like a hallway or a stairway. Rather, it can represent those transitional elements emotionally. Far more often than not, these images are devoid of people. Most of the images that make their way onto this and other image boards like it feature spaces that typically have people present in them, but don't at the time the image was captured. Perhaps it is best to say that the idea of a liminal space is experiencing what it would be like to be in an empty space. I don't just mean that you are the only one there. I mean completely empty, devoid of all presence, even yours. Yet through these images, you experience it all the same. A reflection of the all-too-human state of being stuck in the in-between, of being entirely, completely alone, invited to sit with your thoughts and introspections. But sometimes you are not alone. Sometimes something is alive in this otherwise empty space. Something besides you. Or maybe this place is alive. And you are not supposed to be here. That feeling, that sense that you are in the wrong place, that is what makes the Backrooms a unique artistic idea of its own. From the simple image on 4chan and the accompanying caption, the liminal art movement evolved, diverged into something entirely new. These spaces wouldn't just be empty husks that stirred up seemingly impossible combinations of emotions. These spaces would themselves become hostile. Maybe to remove you, maybe to consume you. An entirely new fictional world was made from this simple idea. Monsters, entities as they are known within the community, were crafted. The various liminal space photos and the locations therein sparked ideas of different levels to the Backrooms. This popular idea of the Backrooms that we saw in this first image, that was only one level of a possibly infinite number of others. When examining what separates the Backrooms from the more typical liminal spaces, it's easy to land on a couple of points. Obviously, traditional liminal spaces are not necessarily spooky. They don't have entities in them. In fact, the liminal spaces subreddit has outright forbade the presence of entities within the images posted there. But there is another difference. On an emotional level, the Backrooms leans into the unease and disquiet of a traditional liminal space far more. This isn't unexpected, of course. It is a part of the horror genre, but the emotional aspect relies on more than mere horror. A liminal space is something that you can encounter, sure. You might find yourself in one and slowly realize it. Even if you did not intend to go there, you could still retrace your steps to it. Remember how you got there. If you found yourself in a school late at night, or an office building after hours, you recall the means by which you arrived there. But the idea of the Backrooms is that not only may your arrival there be unintended, it may also be sudden. In nearly every popular example of the Backrooms, a person no-clips into the Backrooms. No-clipping is a video game term that refers to when you pass through an object in-game where there should be collision. Think of a wall or the floor. You or your character should not be able to pass through things like that. Emotionally, it emphasizes the loneliness not in a way that invites contemplation as it might in the traditional liminal space, but in a way that inspires dread. Here, your loneliness is coming for you. It will swallow you whole. You are not just alone here. You will be forgotten. It will be as if you did not exist. You do not fight or flee for survival in the Backrooms. You do so for the mere right to exist. So run all you like. You'll still be stuck within the same labyrinth. Escape is impossible or next to it. In the art that is the Backrooms, you are consumed by your loneliness, abandoned, forgotten, erased. Your existence is so meaningless in this place that even the lights, those damned lights, humming dreadfully above, will not even grant you the dignity of casting a shadow beneath you. This is the Backrooms, the artistic embodiment of what it means to be utterly consumed by your loneliness, to be consumed by a space that does not want you, a space that hates you, yet will not let you leave. The Backrooms is an artistic evolution that emphasizes the horror, the fear, and the hostility that may come from being in a liminal space or time. However, other evolutions went in a different direction. These emphasize the surreal, the nostalgic, the bizarre. Enter the cores. For clarity, when I say core, I'm referring to a family of related aesthetics, but each explores different emotions, ideas, and themes, all united by their surreal and evocative nature. These aesthetics all have their origins in liminal spaces. More often than not, any image that falls within any type of core category will use a liminal space image as a base, though it is not required. The core aesthetics blur the line between the familiar and the imagination. All seek to amplify certain emotional expressions that are typical of the liminal aesthetic. Which emotions they seek to amplify, however, depend entirely on which core you are observing. Dreamcore earns its name from the dreamlike qualities that so often accompany its presentation. Visuals in this core are often diffuse and soft, giving the image a hazy appearance. Pastel colors tend to be the most common, using gentle hues of blues, pinks, greens, yellows, and purples. Structures within the image almost have a blurred light quality to them, making it difficult to tell where they end and the background begins. Familiar items or household features will be placed in unexpected contexts, leading to a sense of confusion that often resembles the same confusion we may feel after waking up from a dream. Childlike elements are common, where toys, stuffed animals, balloons, swings, and other playground equipment might be featured, which gives the image a nostalgic feel. Captions often feature a motif of wanting to return to a place long abandoned. Or perhaps it is a question of whether all of it was real in the first place. But Dreamcore is more than its visual elements. On an emotional level, it presents us with a feeling of bittersweetness. It makes you pause, as though you've stumbled upon a piece of a dream you had forgotten, or one that you never had. It feels familiar, yet distant, like looking through a window into a memory that is not yours. It's a look back at a past we yearn for, a past we know we can never go back to. For some of us, it may be a past we never experienced at all. It's the yearning to go back into a dream upon waking, even though that dream might not have been real at all. While Dreamcore is the memory of a dream, Weirdcore is the half-forgotten memory of a nightmare, of a tense and vivid dream. Like Dreamcore, that memory is incomplete. Weirdcore images share some similarities to Dreamcore images, featuring some of the same low fidelity and blurry elements. However, the lower visual quality is often far more jarring. Household items and places are stretched to impossible dimensions. Doors may lead to pitch-black voids, or to an endless blue sky. Anachronistic pieces of technology appear, like VCRs, DVD players, and old home computers. Disembodied eyes appear, like strange facsimile depictions of an angel. Unlike Dreamcore, the colors are often muted, interspersed with harsh hues that juxtapose with darker parts of the image. Captions often evoke a sense of emotional distress. It is the embodiment of feeling a pervasive sense of dread, but being unable to identify where it is coming from. Where Dreamcore invited you back into your childhood, Weirdcore trapped you there. These core aesthetics, these liminal aesthetics, reach into the past, into the edges of our memories. But they are not searching to retrieve something. Instead, they leave us with a strange, hollow feeling, as though we've lost something we never even had. When we look at these images, it's like we're missing a piece of ourselves. A place, a time, a feeling that we cannot quite name. That ache, that yearning for a past we never experienced, has a name. Anemoia. Anemoia isn't something that is just part of the liminal aesthetic or the core aesthetic. Instead, it's a thread that runs through much of modern digital art. When we look at an art style like Vaporwave, Anemoia can be plainly seen all over. While it is often associated with an ironic and critiquing view of the past, leaning into an intentionally glorified image of what once was, we oftentimes still yearn for it, because there is something genuine in it. Synthwave invites us to imagine an alternate future, based on 1980s imagery and music. Neon-laden horizons and pulsing beats draw us in. We yearn for these times, these impossible places. We know we have never been. We know that we cannot ever get there. They are out of reach, but when we reach for them through our art, we swear we can feel them brush up against our fingers. But why? Why were they created? Or maybe there's better questions we can ask. Why are these images so evocative? Why are we drawn to these aesthetics? What is it that makes them so captivating to draw such a dedicated following? Why is it that when I look into an image like this, I feel it so deeply within my being? Why these emotions? Why does it resonate so strongly with me? What is it that I and so many others are yearning for? I cannot speak to the intention of the artists who created these images. At most, I can attest to their skill. I know for certain that their works made me feel something I hadn't quite felt before. But when I look inward, when I ask myself these questions, I am left with a world that feels so antithetical to the one I knew growing up. For one reason or another, this world, this existence we have now, it does not feel like the one I was promised when I was a child. Political upheaval and division, international tension. These things are the price of admission to live in history. But there's something even deeper. It's this. It's this. Social media. It's the internet. It's the completely overwhelming deluge of information and content that comes to us at breakneck speeds. I am technically more connected to others than I have been at any point in the past. I have access to more people than I could ever realistically meet and truly know in a single lifetime. Our favorite content is a mere click or swipe away. Our favorite music is right with us, in our pocket. I can see what everyone around me is doing at all times. I am surrounded by people and the things that people create. We are surrounded. And yet, we are more alone now than we have ever been. Friends are a click away, yet never have they felt so distant. This was not a clean break from the world of childhood. It was not a gradual immersion into a new world. Instead, it was a rupture. The past and the future broke apart so suddenly that we were all left in the gulf between, left wondering what the hell we are supposed to do with ourselves. This liminal aesthetic resonates with us because it reminds us all of this. We're reminded of the past, of the whimsy of childhood. We're reminded of being in a place that should feel familiar, but instead it feels uncanny. Liminal spaces represent the general unease, disquiet, and simultaneous comfort of being stuck in the in-between. The backrooms represent the terror of being consumed by your loneliness, of being forgotten in an existence that just does not care about you, an existence that might even seem to just hate you. The cores represent that deep yearning to go back, that deep desire to just be a kid again for one more day. They also represent the dread and defeat we feel when we realize we do not get to go back. Our modern world has so many conveniences, but there is a price to be paid for such things. Nothing in this world is free. No debt goes unpaid. In the end, everything will exact its toll. And this is the response to that sense of rupture from our childhood. All of this feels so unique to our age, to our time and place. But this isn't the first time this has happened. Some 100 years ago, there was another rupture. A break far more violent and destructive than what we're faced with today. Come back with me to the world of yesterday. Before the First World War, Europe was seemingly atop the highest summit. For many of the artists, writers, and thinkers of the time, it was as if they were at the very peak of civilization. New technology sprung forth at every turn. The Industrial Revolution had taken Europe by storm. Things that were mere dreams a few years before were now magnificent realities. Progress was no longer taken as an ideal, but held as a certainty. In all the major cities, Paris, Vienna, Berlin, intellectual, artistic, and cultural life flourished. Every day seemed as if it was worthy of pomp and circumstance, unlike any other. But beneath all the grandeur, there stirred discontent. It was not a grandeur built upon peace and mutual prosperity, but from ruthless ambition, power. According to one historian, Europe was a heap of swords, piled as delicately as jackstraws. One could not be pulled out without moving the others. In late June of 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand would be assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist. The diplomatic firestorm that followed would soon engulf the continent. A month later, what began as a localized war between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Serbia spiraled into the calamity of the First World War. It is almost impossible, even now, to describe what actually happened in Europe on August 4th, 1914. The days before and the days after the First World War are separated not like the end of an old and the beginning of a new period, but like the day before and the day after an explosion. The dream of the old world, the promise of progress never ending, all of it was shattered through the cruel machinery of modern war. At war's end, some 20 million lost their lives. But the war did not only take life. The social order collapsed. For many that survived and bore witness to the carnage, it was as if their very spirit was rent in two. Nowhere was this more evident than in Germany. Though historians continue to debate whether or not Germany was saddled with impossible war debt after the war ended, there is no doubt that the German people themselves felt that way. Soldiers that had marched west for a glorious adventure returned, bearing the scars of war. For some artists, like Otto Dix, art was an opportunity, a necessity, to represent the violent rupture he bore witness to. Like so many others of his time, he was left in the gulf between what was and what was to come. Dix was not a mere observer of the war. He was a soldier who fought on the front lines of the Western Front, where some of the most horrific fighting took place between Germany and the Entente powers of France and Britain. The experience he had there would never leave him, as it does for so many. War left an indelible mark upon him. Dix's work is not a simple representation of war. It is not a one-to-one depiction of the events as they occurred. Rather, Dix's work is a representation of the horror, of the absurdity of the war. Any photograph, however well taken, can depict war. But Dix's work depicted the meaning of war. The most elegant prose, the most brilliant use of language, all of it can fall short describing what we feel. But this is unmistakable. Like confronting monsters. In this example here, stormtroopers advancing under a gas attack, we know that the stormtroopers here, they too have lives to lose. For so many across Germany, across Europe, the past had been violently ripped away by the calamity of the First World War. For the artists and the audience that took in their works, art of this kind and many others was a way of feeling what had happened to not only them, but to their entire world. A way of reconciling with the upending of everything they knew, everything they understood, everything they held dear. Art was, and always has been, a way for us to navigate the chaos that follows change, be it sudden or violent, gradual and creeping. Our art is a mirror. Just as so many did back then, we too have responded to the ruptures of our own time. Our art is a reflection of what we feel on the deepest level. To feel alone, to feel isolated. Those are feelings that are not unique to this time, no matter how awful they may be. To create art that reflects the deep disquiet, that is not new either. Just as Otto Dix and others used their art to grapple with rupture and disquiet. We once again see that same impulse in art like this. A liminal aesthetic reflecting our struggle with the fragmentation of the digital age. Both are responses to rupture. Sure, you can throw your hands up and say it's just an internet fad, that it's not that deep. I think to do so would be to miss the bigger picture. Chances are, if you've made it this far into the video, you probably don't think that way. But if you'll humor me, I would like to ask you again. What do you feel when you see an image of a World War I era battlefield? What do you feel seeing a surreal image like this? A depiction of war. What do you feel when you see an image of a liminal aesthetic? These things that are seemingly worlds apart, so disparate that no comparison or link could possibly be made. What could these things possibly have to do with one another? Everything.